This is Jim Williams with the latest on Hurricane Arthur as of 11 a.m. on July 4th. It is currently 12:40 p.m. The 11 a.m. advisory has the system as a Category 1 hurricane racing well away from the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Now, last night and early this morning, the Outer Banks took the brunt of Hurricane Arthur as a Category 2 hurricane. And let's take a look at the positions in which it moved, and it came very close to Wilmington, so it's going to be a brush for Wilmington, North Carolina in the Hurricane City database. Then it moved up right over Morehead City, North Carolina, passed almost directly over Morehead City and Cape Lookout areas, and at that time it was a 100-mile-per-hour hurricane, but I'm going to show you some interesting buoy reports from down there that may conflict with that report of 100 miles per hour. And then we had the system passing basically right over Morehead City, and then it passed right just west of Cape Hatteras and into the Pamlico Sound and then out into the open Atlantic, and caused a little bit of surge flooding on the west-facing beaches of the Outer Banks of North Carolina. But overall, really not any heavy damage in the Outer Banks. In fact, everything I've been reading has been minor damage, and I think the reason for that is maybe these winds were not quite as high as what was forecast, or at least the advisory from the National Hurricane Center. I'll get to the buoys in just a minute. But there's our track, and the system is headed out to sea. Let's take a look at a enhanced shot of Hurricane Arthur, and you can see that it's starting to come apart a little bit. We have west ear moving into the system and kind of breaking it down a little bit. It's getting into cooler sea surface temperatures, but it might maintain enough strength to be near hurricane strength when it comes near the Nova Scotia area. But it's going to be a little bit rainy up in the northeast, and then that's going to clear out probably by this evening for any 4th of July festivities that people want to salvage. So let's go to our next image source here and talk about the position of Hurricane Arthur. By tomorrow morning, early morning hours, it'll be coming post-tropical, extratropical system, and coming into Cape Sable and then moving up towards Sydney, Nova Scotia. It'll be basically traversing the entire Nova Scotia area. And in fact, 2 of the cities in Nova Scotia, Sydney and Cape Sable, are in my top 20 this year to be affected by a named storm, so I can knock 2 names off the list. But it looks like this will be strong tropical storm type winds for the entire Nova Scotia area. And incidentally, that's going to be the next feature at Hurricane City, is Cape Sable, Nova Scotia, for tomorrow morning. All right, let's talk about the performance of the models on Hurricane Arthur. Here is the NGXI. Now, this is the Navy NOGAPS, the Navy NavGem model, the interpolated model of the Navy. And this model kind of is the brunt of a lot of jokes on the internet. It's not real respected like the GFS or the Euro model. But this model nailed the track of Hurricane Arthur when it was down near the Bahamas. And, I mean, you can't draw it any better practically than what this line is showing, and this was from about 2 days ago, maybe just a tad east of where this line is, but it pretty much nailed the track on this system. Incidentally, the best intensity forecast on this was the ship model, and that was off by about 31 knots over a 5-day period. So ship was the best, and the Navy NOGAPS was the best on track for this system. So with that said, where does the Navy NOGAPS think it's going to go next? And that would be towards the Nova Scotia area, skirting the north coast, and then going just north of Newfoundland. So, maybe it won't be as bad for Newfoundland, but these systems do expand when they get up in the North Atlantic, so all these areas are going to be impacted by Arthur. There was some damage out there in the Outer Banks. This is from Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, which, by the way, we were streaming all last night. Live coverage of Hurricane Arthur making landfall in the Outer Banks, and Mark Sudduth had his live cam going, and Jeff Petrowski had his live cam going. We recorded a lot of this, and will be available for the archive subscribers. Try to break it down. It's not going to be a very long video because this was basically a very non-eventful hurricane, but at least in the whole general scheme of hurricane history. Not to say that the people there were not affected badly. I'm sure there were some people that had some damage in the Outer Banks from this hurricane, but overall it could have been a lot worse. But here's a buckled area of road taken by Mark Sudduth in the Outer Banks, and I think this is just north of Cape Hatteras. I I'm sure this has kind of been repeated maybe in a few locations along the Outer Banks. Now here's a shot of our buoy map from the front page of HurricaneCity.com. And click the West Atlantic buoys right below the tracking map, and you can zoom right in on these buoys. So I decided this morning to go through, do a little research on the buoys as the hurricane made its way through the Outer Banks, just to kind of see what the winds were on the buoys out here as the height of this hurricane was hitting. And inside that circle area there is Cape Lookout, North Carolina. And if you look at the Cape Lookout OBS, here you'll see that at the height of, right when the, you can see the passage of the eye. First we had around 10 p.m. we had southeast winds in advance of the hurricane hitting, and we had a high gust of 83 miles an hour right on the coast there. And then the winds became south-southeast and kind of died down a little bit. It's only about 28 to 30 miles an hour because they were partially in the eye at that time. And then at midnight, the wind shifted to the west between 60 and 68 knots, and that was the max winds right there on the coast at that observation tower out there. And that just tells you that maybe these winds were not the Category 2 that they were indicating, because this is really dead, almost dead center of where the eye came in, and got all four quadrants of the hurricane. And we're seeing a high gust here of 68 knots. That's it's about 80 miles an hour. And here is the platform that measured those winds, and that's 9.8 meters above sea level, the anemometer on this. So it's a little bit higher than you would normally expect for an anemometer. So that's even above ground, way higher than most people would experience at ground level. And it was only about 80 miles an hour. Now, if you go a little bit inland, check this out. You go just a tad inland to Beaufort, North Carolina, which is up near Morehead City, and you can clearly see what happened here. We had the system coming in. The winds were out of the east-southeast and then east around 50 knots. And then the eye came in. And look at the drop-off in the winds here, about 9 to 10 miles an hour. They were almost into dead calm, pressure 28.91 inches. And then the wind shifted to the north, 15 miles an hour or so, and then the winds came in from the northwest, and the rest is history. But again, look at these winds here. Not very impressive. Just going 15, 20 miles inland made a huge difference in the winds. We're talking high wind gusts, 59 knots here. That's about 70 miles an hour at the surface when this system was moving in on Morehead City and Cape Lookout, North Carolina. So a lot to be said about the winds in Hurricane Arthur. It'll be interesting to see if they reanalyze the winds on this system. But anyway, here's one more look at Hurricane Arthur on the AVN loop here, and you can see that the system is not as well organized nearly as it was yesterday when it passed through. So this is probably going to be down to below hurricane status by the time it gets up to Nova Scotia. But that'll be our next feature. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll have the archive available over the next few days from Hurricane Arthur. And the rest of the tropics is quiet right now. There's nothing in the models indicating anything's going to develop in the next 5 days or so. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll have updates as warranted throughout the hurricane season. That's it for now. Thank you for visiting Hurricane City.